becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism. We see America through the eyes of someone who has been the victim of Americanism. We don't see any American dream. We've experienced only the American nightmare. We haven't benefited from America's democracy. We've only suffered from America's hypocrisy. And the generation that's coming up now can see it and are not afraid to say it. 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 And are not afraid to say it.
And are not afraid to say it. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is BlackWestchester.com presents the People Before Politics radio show, 6 to 8 every Sunday on intermixradio.com, starting off a few minutes late. Thank you for all of y'all and your patience. I see a few of y'all already saying is there going to be a show. I see Lorraine's daughter's already checked in. Caitlin Gleason's already checked in. Omi Medina's already checked in. Luis Cherico, Gail Baxter.
Hi, people.
Who else? Robin, I guess Dion. I hope I pronounced that right. Uncle Frank Trulio Jr. Marvin Church just checked in. And is that everybody so far? Yes, it is. So, welcome to another episode of People Before Politics. I think this is like 186. We're on episode 186 now.
Yay.
Coming close to that 200 episode.
Yay.
We're going to have to do something for that because we did something for the 100th episode. We're going to have to do something real big for the 200th episode. So anyway, I just want to welcome everybody to the show. You got to give me a minute. It's like just walked in the door, like literally last minute rushing. Because Bob was driving real slow. No, just joking. see, he said I wasn't. He said I wasn't like. He's trying to get me to lighten up in the car. He said I wasn't. I was.
Finally.
Word up. Shout out to Mount Vernon City Court Judge Adrian Armstrong. He's listening. So real quick before we have a packed show before we get into it. Couple of things. So as we were talking about, I think we talked about it last week. I know Dr. Bob and I had discussed it before. The Kavanaugh confirmation went as most people thought it would. It was a foregone conclusion that he was going to be confirmed.
Yep.
I mean, when I heard them discussing, insiders saying that, they had already decided a certain amount of loss of the women voters was acceptable. Losing the House and the Senate was acceptable, and in turn, if they lost they would have lost the presidency.
Yeah. But
that did not matter as long as they got this man confirmed. That's how important it was to them. So we knew. I mean, while I applauded the Senator Flake for at least extending it for FBI investigation, I didn't expect much, but and I didn't expect that to really change the situation. I see, Bob, you want to weigh in on that a little bit, or you have anything to say? Oh, I didn't even turn y'all on yet. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Wrong shot. That's just Lorraine by herself. Look at that.
Well, we could look at that shot all day.
There you go. Oh,
man, it's much diminished now.
Dr. Bob in the place to be.
Yes.
Yes, did you want to comment on that, or did you weigh in on that just a little, or?
All I can say is that I was deeply disappointed with the decision of the Republican-led Senate to confirm Kavanaugh. I think that one reason for my disappointment, as the disappointment that many people feel, is because of the half-ass nature. Let me put it like that.
Okay,
the half-ass nature of
that's appropriate.
the investigation that they did. I think they merely had an obligation to do a thorough investigation and let the evidence fall where it might. And instead of seeing if there was any substantive evidence, they essentially decided to, do a sham investigation. And so I think many of the issues still remain unresolved. And in that sense, I think it is a major blow to the legitimacy of the court. I think Kavanaugh's presence will continue to be a stain, and will call into question the legitimacy of any close rulings in which he proves to be the swing vote.
The other thing that
It's not a good, not a very sensible decision.
Like I always say, with every story I do, I learn something new. So I did learn that, which I did not know, that a Supreme Court justice can be impeached as a president can.
That's what I was just gonna say. Yeah, if there's a turnover in Congress and Congress has the authority to do another investigation, they can investigate and they can subpoena and they can impeach him. But that's unlikely to happen.
Well, I think I honestly shout out to Monty Whitaker, Prince George County in Maryland, tuned in. I think the Democrats, and I said this before, I think all of this, I'm not sure if there will be a change in the House. I mean, they still have to get out and get them votes. And the Trump supporters have shown, and that it doesn't matter what is done, what is said, they're still going to rock with
support him.
Like, I mean, didn't he make a comment? He can shoot somebody in the head on Fifth Avenue, and they'll still support him. And basically, while that's a drastic, I don't know if that is the case, but it seems like he can say and do anything.
Well, he can grab women by the JJ, and they'll still put him in. That's what he said.
Louise said there was 99 more problems with 99 more problems wrong with confirming him.
I'm sure there was a lot of them.
Yeah, but so I think it's what we're seeing now is tribalism. It's not bipartisan. Is that the right word? Yeah, it's more tribalism than bipartisan. I think that's the flaw. It leads back to the flaw of the two-party system, which one of our guests will definitely be talking about. Civil rights lawyer, attorney Mike Sussman. He's on the second hour. And I'm sure from hearing him talk recently, that's something he talks about. The duopoly, is that the right word?
That is the word.
Yes, and I'm trying to incorporate these words.
Hold on.
Don't be just what's that word?
Gesticulating.
Yeah, don't be gesticulating at me. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, Jesus.
We was a little joke from yesterday.
Your comments are full of gesticulation there. Yes. So yes, talking about the duopoly, and I'm sure he's going to speak. And he just stuck his head in the window. So I'm sure he smiled when I said that. So I'm sure he will be discussing that. But what else has been going on locally? What else? I know Kavanaugh has been consuming the news. What else has been in the news this last week?
Well, a little bit of personal news that I wanted to share with the audience members is that I was selected by County Executive George Latimer to serve on the complete census, complete count committee for the upcoming 2020 census.
Dr. Bob.
Yes, and as everyone knows, we have our next decennial census coming up in 2020. And there's a lot that rides on the outcome of the count. And if we are going to make sure that we qualify for all of the maximum benefits that we might possibly receive under federal and state funding laws, and also if we want to make sure that our districts are redrawn in a way that works to the advantage of Westchester County residents, then that means that we're all going to have to pool our resources together and make sure we have a complete count. And I wanted to, one of the things that struck me when I was thinking about this the other day is actually my sense is that the number of Latinos in Westchester County actually outnumber the number of African Americans, which means that
55%.
Right, and Latinos make up such a sizable part of the Westchester County community and also any progressive political coalition that we really, and I speak as an African American. I think the African American community.
I didn't know that. I did not know that. Okay.
Well,
go ahead.
I'm saying I want to stress
yeah.
the importance to the African American community, and I think to the progressive community as a whole, irrespective of color, of making sure that efforts on the part of the federal government to suppress the count of our Latino residents here in the county, whether they be citizens or not, is an attack on voting rights here in the United States that we can't afford to take lying down. And I want to encourage all listeners to be sure to make plans now to set aside time to volunteer to get out there and encourage our our Latino brothers and sisters especially, but all non-citizens, undocumented persons here in Westchester County, so we can be sure to get adequate representation.
Go ahead.
I did the last census. I worked on the last census, and I was in charge of the Latino count. And I actually, not volunteers, I hired a couple of people. There was money in a grant.
I'm submitting my application now, Lorraine.
To hire a couple of people. Actually, one of the people I hired was Carmen Gomez Goldberg.
Hey, shout out to Carmen.
Yeah. We worked on the and we were this short of reaching our goal for more federal funding. So short. We got up to I think it was 860,000, and we needed $1 million to get more funding. People.
Okay.
That is.
So I wanna real quick, and then we can move on. Shout to Donna Nolan. She just spoke, and Chris
Hey, Donna.
Breezy.
Yes.
So for those that don't know, let's just take this moment. What is the importance of the census, and what do they use those numbers for? Like, why is that? Because a lot of people don't even know why is that important. Why is the census
very important.
I mean, I want you to break that down real quick for our audience that don't know.
So the census is important for two principal reasons. Number one, under the original provisions of the Constitution, every 10 years we have to hold a census to count the total number of people who reside in the United States, and that becomes the basis for apportioning representatives to congresspersons to the House of Representatives. So those those states with higher populations are entitled to more representatives in the House of Representatives. Those with lower, a lesser number. But in order to get our fair share of representatives in the House, we need to have an accurate count. So that's the first reason. But in addition to that, the census is important because the population figures and other related information that's gathered becomes the basis for a lot of our federal funding policies that are used to determine how much aid states and localities are going to receive. And so we need, if we're going to make sure that we have our fair share of voting power, but also the fair share of financial supports that come from the state and the federal government, we need to have an accurate census count. And I want to add that the biggest threat to an accurate census count this upcoming census is the prospect that the census will include, for the first time, a question that asks people their citizenship status.
Yeah.
And there's, Lorraine, why don't you expound a little bit more why there's fear that this will...
Well, there's always been fear with undocumented people when it comes to the census. I mean, it's a lot of times it's like pulling teeth, just trying to get them to say their name. And so, I mean, they're very, very fearful, but... if you ask them, are you a citizen or not, I mean, it opens the flooddoors to a lot of things. I mean, you don't know if ICE is going to use it for anything. You don't know if the police are going to use it for anything. But most importantly, these folks think that will assume that if you're a citizen, automatically they're going to get you. If you're not a citizen, rather.
Right.
So you said that's a question that they...
So ordinarily, the census has not included a question that asks people about their citizenship status.
And they're including it this year?
Yep.
Primarily because the census is supposed to count all residents, irrespective of their citizenship status. But the Republican Party, the Trump administration, has announced plans to include a citizenship question, although that's being contested in the courts now.
Yeah, I was gonna
and the
say
reason why it is thought that they decided to include the citizenship question was because they knew it would dissuade undocumented workers from various racial ethnic backgrounds from actually submitting their name to the count.
Real quick, a couple of shout outs. Tara, Lattimore Wilson, DJ Nesto Acosta from Virginia, Pepsi Martinez said, "What's up, cuz?" To Lorraine and Simone Hines. Yeah, so I just wanted to get that in so people understand what the census were and what the, I understand they don't want to include that other group of people. I was going to say, what's the dangers of them, undocumented people, answering the census and, like you said, being on a list maybe, that ICE might use or, might be used against them. So what encouragement do they have to participate in the census?
Well, if they do not participate in the census, that means the areas where they reside are likely to
get hit hard, including the schools that children go to.
Right, are not going to get their fair share of funds and also, sufficient political representation. So those are the two principal.
Well, one of our listeners, Louise Cherico, said it was on there but taken off at some point. In 1930, her grandfather was an alien resident.
Right. So my understanding, although I'm no expert
I'm
on
just
the
reading
census,
the
is
comment,
that the question has never been included. But I could be mistaken.
So we'll have to look that up.
Yes, that's one of the things that
that's on your list.
Yeah.
Now I want to I know we time permit. We got several guests here. I want to get the first one in. Ann McDermott, is she still in there? Can she come in the room? I want to bring her in. And hello, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Mr. McDermott, how are you? All right, good to see you.
It's like a family affair here.
No.
How's everyone?
We're good, Ann. How are you?
So I just need you to pull your mic up to you. It moves, and speak into the mic and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I am Ann McDermott. I reside in the city of Mount Vernon.
Okay, and before we get started, let me give you an official welcome. So I know you've had some stuff going on and some stuff issue or two that you wanted to discuss, and I'm going to let you get right into it.
All right. Well, I know this gentleman here to
Yes.
the right of me for years. I have been with the city of Mount Vernon for 20 years. I was hired by Mayor Ernie Davis in 1997. He took a chance on me, and I, proven myself, received a few promotions. Now, fast forward, I survived 4 terms. Mayor, which Ernie Davis 3 terms, and Clinton Young 1 term.
Okay.
Mayor Thomas came in. I survived 1 year, really a year and a half. So in August of 2017.
Now, what were you doing for the city?
What position did you
position?
Well, I started out as a case manager for the Section 8 department.
Okay.
After that, I was promoted to director of the Section 8 office back in 2006.
Okay.
As you know, it was a big thing where it shut down because of other entities that I had nothing to do with. Okay.
Right.
From there, I went upstairs to HOPWA, which is the Continuum of Care program. I was a case manager there. I believed I worked there for 16 years.
Okay.
16 years. In 2017, Mayor Thomas came, called in a meeting, and stated that HUD sent him a letter stating that there were no more funding. This is not so. My salary is written in the grant 100%. So where did my money go? Okay? I left
So
quiet.
you say, there's no more funding for you to employ you, to pay you.
To employ 10 of us.
Okay.
We were furloughed.
Okay.
10 of us was furloughed. It
So
was
this happened in 2017?
Yes, September of 2017.
Okay.
Okay. it was given to us verbally. And several of us says, listen, we need something in writing, because how are we going to move on? I need something in writing. We wasn't supposed to come back the day after Labor Day, but we showed up. A couple days later, we were called in a meeting. There was a letter given to us stating about the furlough, and you're not terminated. If funds would become available, we would, I guess, call us back or whatever. Few were called back. I wasn't. But at that time, we were let go September 4th. And by September 6th, I secured employment. I moved on quietly. However, even though I was with the city for 20 years, on paper, back in 2000, I went out on maternity. I had my youngest son. So I was out for a year. I came back, and on paper, he let me go 19 years and 4 months. In order for me to receive my full pension, I need 20 years. Okay? So that has affected my benefits, my monthly pension that I would receive when I'm 55, which I'll be 55 year 2020. Okay?
Oh, okay.
So I secured employment. I left quietly. I didn't kick up dust. Left quietly. I gained employment 2 days later. And I feel it's safe to say, like I said, I've known this gentleman for years. You know my character.
Yes.
Okay? I feel I have good reputation in the city of Mount Vernon. I went to school here. I raised my children here. I have 3 children, beautiful children, 2 grandbabies. While I'm at this new employment, a year later, I received a promotion. The program that I used to handle at the city, it was a funded grant program. I was promoted to take over that program. September 26th, I went to a meeting. We have a monthly meeting every month. It's called a Continuum of Care meeting, where all the agency under one umbrella that provide services for the delicate population, the homeless individuals. So I show up, and within a couple of minutes, my current employer, was contacted by the mayor.
So that's this year?
That was 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And his request was to remove me from this grant, because he does not want me running the grant, because, quote unquote, I messed up things while I was at the city. Let me just say this. If I had screwed up anything for the city, trust and believe me, I would not serve there for 20 years. Okay? I've never been written up by any commissioners, any supervisors, and I've never had any issues with Mayor Ernie Davis, or Mayor Clinton Young. And the 1 year that I served under him, I've never been called into his office. Okay, so I don't know what this issue is that he has with me, but personally, I think it is personal. It's a personal attack that he has a third party in his ear. Whichever way, you're defaming my character, okay, because I was demoted. Okay, so it's not even, it's
So you were demoted, but you still had the job?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And now this is also for the city of Mount Vernon? Or
No.
Okay, so this
It's
doesn't count with your
different.
pension? Okay.
No.
Okay.
But I have to get back into the retirement system to get those months in order for me to get my 20 years. Like I said, I have proven, to individuals in this community, whether it's political or personal, the type of character that I am. Okay.
Now let me go ahead, Lorraine.
When you say you have to get back into the system for 4 months, is that the city of Mount Vernon system, or any retirement
It's
system?
the New York State
State
retirement system.
Oh, okay.
So you can get a county job and you can be okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let me playing devil's and excuse me, I don't if I ask something that sounds like a silly question, I don't know. So the mayor for the position that you have for the city, the mayor does have, I guess all the mayors have the authority to hire and let go whoever was there, especially if they was with previous administrations or something, right? And
Yes, they do.
Okay, so he has that power. Okay, I just want to be fair, and because people.
And honestly, I would respect that. Every mayor that comes in, you write, and everybody does things differently. When Mayor Davis won his second term, everyone came in, you write your letter of resignation, the mayor either accept it or reject it. Okay? So, yeah, I know I am serving at the pleasure of the mayor, but that's not why I was let go. I have a letter stating that we were furloughed, that correspondence came from HUD stating that there was no more funding. That's what.
And your contention, Ann, is that is, in fact, untrue.
Yes.
See, and the reason why I asked that question is because while the mayor does have wide latitude to appoint personnel of his choosing, these programs, grant programs, do have stipulations on how the money can be expended. Although I can tell you, I speak now because I had a similar situation while serving in the city university for a grant-funded program. And much of the money that had been earmarked, it was actually, I hate to say this is for the Black Male Initiative program. Much of the money had been earmarked for personnel costs, but there was a lot of bureaucratic infighting that eventually meant that the money was sapped from its original, the original use that it was allocated for. And basically was used by executive personnel, like the mayor, to kind of do with what they see.
Now, is that, in fact, illegal? Is that...
My sense is, I can just say what my sense is, not knowing the letter of the law, that the funds are allocated for very specific uses, and you cannot unilaterally decide to reallocate it for other purposes.
Now, do you have to report to HUD how the funds were spent? Or can HUD come in and, I guess, audit the situation? Or,
when there's an audit, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So what would it take to make an audit?
Every year the program there's an audit, and that's why I said when the statement was made, because I've heard it on the street, the statement was made that I screwed up things in the city of Mount Vernon. And this is from a third party. So if I screwed up, every time there's an audit, that's like you checking your child's homework. If the child make a mistake, you check it, correct? The child takes the homework to the teacher. If it's incorrect, whose issue is that? It comes back to the parent, correct?
Right.
So if I do, whether it's entering information into the system, collecting data, and my annual recertification, because every year the client comes in bringing their income information, household information, whether it's a change, decrease. That is what I do, and I make sure that they are on top of what they're supposed to do. Now, when the audit comes in, if there's findings, they will say, okay, this needs to be fixed, boom, 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 is fixed, and if it's not fixed, then you're cited. When you're cited, you do not receive funding. They could take the funding from you.
Okay, now, when you said cited, but I wonder, so is there a process? Say you did mess something up. Is there a process where you have to be written up, or is there a process that has to be followed for you to be fired? In other words, or they can just say you're fired?
Well, again, you're serving at the pleasure of the mayor, but the mayor does not micromanage. You have your commissioners, you have your supervisors. And again, the 20 years that I've been there, I've never been written up, I've never been pulled into the office, and I can back that up. That I can.
So one of our listeners is asking, is there like a union that can fight for you, or?
I'm not in a union because I'm not civil service.
That was grant money.
Yeah, I am serving at the pleasure of each mayor, as I said.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
I wanted to ask a question. And the program that you worked in, was this part of the community development grant blocks that are regularly audited by the federal?
No, I work for HUD itself. HOPWA is The acronym for HOPWA is Housing for People with AIDS, but it's a broad program now. We just don't serve individual with AIDS. We serve alcohol, individuals who are recovering addicts from alcohol, substance abuse, mental health, veterans. So, you know, like I said, it's under the Continuum of Care program. The CDBG grant is separate. Okay.
So okay. So, let me ask you this question. So, what made you decide to speak up now, and what would you like to see happen? What is
the reason I'm here to speak up is, like I said, last year when he came and told us about the furlough story, I said, you know what? You have a right to say you don't want us there, okay? But when I realized, again, my pension was affected, I said, you know what? To me, not that I'm one of those crybabies, but it does affect you. I'll give you an example. For 20 years, you can get your when you turn 55, you could collect your pension. Your monthly pension could be, let's say, $2,800, versus on paper I'm 19.45 years. That's about $1,200. So which one would you rather? $2,800 a month or $1,200? So it has affected me. As I said, I left quietly. Even when I tried to file for unemployment, it was a tug of war. Our income wasn't reported. I had to collect my own data, find pay stubs.
Wait. What do you mean your income was not reported?
It wasn't reported to the Department of Labor.
It's supposed to be?
Yes. It was not reported. I had to get my own information and send to the Department of Labor.
So not just you, but
all 10 of
everyone.
us. All 10 of us that, well, I can't speak for everyone else, but I know the issue I went through to collect at least 2 weeks, because when I was furloughed, how was I supposed to pay my bills? So I did apply for unemployment, because when I started my job, even though I was hired September 6th, I started September 23rd. You know, I gave myself a little break. You know, I collected the 2 weeks. And like I said, even after that, I just felt like I'm being attacked. For whatever reason, whoever's in his ear, I don't know. But now you're trying to defame my character. I built this my personality and my reputation in the city of Mount Vernon. Don't try to come after me and make it seem like I'm doing this or I did this. I've been gone from the city for a year. Let me be. Because I have children. And let me just say this. I don't care whether it's his family, anyone else out there wondering why I'm speaking up, because no one, man or woman, would ever say, until it happens to them, when you start trying to take away how I take care of my family, I have a problem with that. And I'm sure any one of you would feel the same way.
Absolutely.
I got Brother Ken Bright from is asking a question. He says, so there is no redress to this issue? And the second part of his question, is a class action possible?
See, the class action, the 10 individuals that was furloughed with me, I can't stand by myself. Okay? I cannot stand by myself. Everyone went their ways.
Okay, I'm trying to get some. Yeah, go find out what he just said, just real quick.
Go ahead. It might be. Yes.
Go.
Okay. Yeah.
So we have an attorney in the room.
Mike, you want to come in?
You want to come in, Mike?
You sure? Yeah. No, sit down, because we could.
We're gonna have you come back in, but willing to speak to this since you are an attorney.
So
This is a civil rights attorney, Mike Sussman, who is running on the Green Party for a New York Attorney
But
General.
I'm in a different hat now.
Right. But
The only
just introduce
reason
you.
I was at the door is when you asked about a class action, you need a certain number of people to do a class action. Normally 10 people is an insufficient number. The other issue is that each of them has to be similarly situated. and there has to be a predominance of facts that are common to all of those people.
Okay.
And you probably, in the employment context, that's difficult because each of the people has a different specific situation. So I just wanted to intervene with that so that we don't get off on that.
I definitely appreciate you, and he will come back later in the show talking about running for New York Attorney General.
Yeah.
But I thank you for that information, though. See, it pays to have an attorney in the house.
I can tell you that, and 'cause I don't know if you know Mike Sussman's reputation, but my aunt often mentions him in our household discussion of union politics and some of the most successful, effective representatives of injured, aggrieved groups here in Westchester County.
And I think he won a big case for the Yonkers.
Yonkers, the housing
NAACP.
desegregation with NAACP with Karen Edmondson. Shout out to Karen Edmondson.
Shout out to Karen Edmondson. Okay, so that's the answer to that question, Ken Bright. So we got that answer. So, okay, and I'm trying to get to I want you to voice your opinion, and I'm trying to give the listeners a full idea of what's going on. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I want you to just reiterate this for us, if you would. And did you tell us that you were let go in September
of 2017?
2017. Subsequently got another job outside of the Mount Vernon city government.
Yes.
And Mayor Thomas recently decided to call your current employer and ask them to take some sort of
grant.
Remove you from the grant program.
Did they? No.
Yes.
Oh, Jesus.
Because, I mean, I want to be sure that
oh my
That's
God.
why I said
the audience
I would
is
like
aware
to be
of
left
just
alone.
Oh, that's
much retribution. I mean, it's not even clear to me what the source of the mayor's displeasure with you would be, but it seems like this goes well beyond any kind of
Personal.
screw-ups that one could have made on the job, and seems highly personal. It's very unusual to hear of former employers reaching out to the current employer of an ex-employee in order to ask them to take some sort of punitive measure. But this is one of the many reasons why Rich has engendered such ill will from so many people across the city of Mount Vernon, because this is actually not the first time that I've heard of the mayor going well out of his way to try to make sure that people who he's been formally affiliated with, don't enjoy full professional success once they.
So let me ask. So he told, and now let me reiterate this part too. So he told your current employer that you had messed up some stuff, messed things up when you worked for the city.
Mm-hmm.
If you get fired for a reason of that nature, don't you usually get something in writing saying that?
Yes, but I wasn't fired. I was demoted.
Right. So I mean, isn't that like when you go to explain to your current employer, that I wasn't fired for that? Did you have that conversation and it didn't matter, or did it?
No.
Well, not if he gets a call from Mayor Thomas. That'll be hard to. Well,
I was.
she can argue.
Yeah,
She
I
can
was.
answer.
I was demoted by. Let's see. The meeting was at 11 a.m. I was demoted. By the time I got back to the office, I was called in the meeting the next morning.
Is this another governmental agency? No. Okay.
It's privately
Private
owned.
sector. One of the things that concerns me is that it is unusual for executive officers of our municipalities to share the privileged information regarding employee
Right.
personnel files. Ordinarily, we are under, government officials are under, fairly strict rules about what kind of information they can share and under what circumstances. And while it would be, I think, typical for anyone, a former employer, to share information about someone if they received a request from a second party, I've never heard of the former employer taking the initiative to communicate derogatory information about someone's former employment history. And I just wonder, although I do not know definitively, whether that's a violation of any confidentiality rules.
Well, I want to definitely follow up with you offline. You know how to get my number.
Yes.
So I will follow up with you offline. Is there any last words that you would like to get to the public before you leave? Is there any?
The only thing I want to say is, you know, if you feel attacked, I think my biggest mistake was pretty much keeping quiet. Speak up. You have a right to your opinions. There's freedom of speech. Don't sit quietly. And I do want to say that I've had a lot of support. You know, again, me being in the city for 20 some odd years, well, really 47, but work for the city, I've developed, you know, a lot of close friendships and relationships. Like over here. BK, yeah. And a lot of people have came forward to assist me. Ms. Gleason is one. That's why I'm here.
Right. Shout out to her. I think she's listening right now.
Andre Wallace, Mayor Clinton Young, and a few others if I, you know.
Well, I just want you to know real quick, the other show host, Damon K. Jones, my co-partner in Black Westchester, he's listening right now. And he said, "Hey, Ann.
Hey.
We are with you. We got your back." So I wanted to let you know.
DK.
He also said, yes, you have to call the devil out for his wrongdoing.
Yes. Yes. And AJ, I thank you.
No problem.
And I thank you. I didn't get a chance to
Lorraine.
meet you, Lorraine. Thank you, guys.
Nice to meet you.
Well, I'm sorry I didn't have more time to give you because I have a lot more questions, but I wanted to talk to you probably offline and see maybe what I can do as far as developing a story of, you know, getting more of the information out or
You got it.
how you want to handle this and, you know, just following up with you. So please keep in touch and on that level and I will do what I can.
Thank you.
You know, I will look into the situations. That's why I'm asking you certain questions so I know who I can go to ask for answers.
I so appreciate you.
Because that's, you know, I got to know, I got to figure that part out. So.
Yeah. And thank you, everyone who's on here. Oh, what's his name? Atif?
Atif,
Yes.
Hi, I've never met him, but looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
So I just exit, right?
Okay. Yes, thank you very much for your time. Ann McDermott came here to talk about a grievance with the city, and we're going to look into it. And we thank her for speaking up and bringing this to the attention. The next guest that I have is Jared Apuzzo. Oh, okay, there you go. I just saw somebody's hand go like this. It's Apuzzo, right?
Yeah,
okay. No, I know your mother's last name. That don't mean that's your last name. So I wanted to make sure
That's
before
my
I
last
said it,
name.
I didn't get it wrong. So I want to welcome you to the show. First off, let me give you a round of applause.
Thank you.
So I just want to end the last segment. I don't want to overturn. I will be looking into this. I don't know. I don't have answers at this point, but I will be making certain phone calls. Anyone who actually is listening who can fill me in on that process, the HUD process, the funding process, anybody would have any information, please feel free to contact me this week. Because that's the first thing I need to understand how that process works before I can have a second conversation about this and who I would need to talk to. So anybody, I would ask you to reach out to us. Secondly, so I want to introduce my next guest here, and I had you come by. I just want to say, so people have probably seen by now, Black Westchester is going to have our first actual fundraiser. And you know, we work on advertisement and donations and stuff like that to keep the paper free, and the radio show and all this information to be able to give it free to the community. But I feel like, you know, somebody asked me to write something real quick, and I did, and I feel like, you know, when people are in certain positions, when you have a certain platform, you need to use your platform to help others. And one of the organizations that I know about, the Soup Kitchen, that I've been hearing a lot about, and I'm gonna let Jared talk about what they do, but their funding has been considerably cut for the last 2 years, and they're still continuing to do their job. So I wanted to extend this fundraiser for Black Westchester as Black Westchester fundraiser for the Soup Kitchen, and a great portion of the proceeds will be going to the Soup Kitchen to keep the Soup Kitchen operational so they can continue to function and do what they do. Now, for those who don't know, speak about what exactly the Mount Vernon Soup Kitchen, the services it provides for the community. What does it do? How long has it been in existence, et cetera, et cetera?
All right, well, first let me thank you guys in Black Westchester for hosting that event and thinking about us and giving us some of those proceeds, because we do desperately need it. So what we do, we serve.
Pull your mic. You can pull it close.
Yeah, sure.
Pull it.
So
I
we
want people to
do.
be able to hear you. Yeah.
We serve a full dinner, 4 nights per week, Tuesday through Friday, to anyone in need. We don't ask for any eligibility criteria. It's totally free. You just walk in, sign your name, and you get a free meal. We also give out a brown bag lunch to take out with the meal. We used to do a breakfast program when we were in Sacred Heart Church, but when that church closed down, we moved to the Armory, and since the Armory is a senior center, they're in there all day long, pretty much up until 2:30. So we had to cut the breakfast program, and but we still do we used to give out the brown bag lunch with the breakfast to take out after the breakfast, but since we don't have the breakfast, now we just give it out with the dinner. Along with that, we have tons of volunteer opportunities for local schools and churches and clubs, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, individuals, businesses. Everyone comes in to cook meals for us and serve the meals, and that's pretty much the extent of what it is. It's fairly simple. We're serving food 4 nights a week, and offering the volunteer opportunities.
So how many people do you get coming in a night?
We're doing right now. We're doing an average of around 60 to 80 a night, depending on the time of the month, the weather. There's a lot of factors, but we're averaging about that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now, and
did I say 60 a month? I'm sorry, a night.
A night.
said a night.
Yeah,
You said a night.
All right.
So, and I don't want this to be just a reason to attack the current administration, but basically you were getting funding. Explain, you were getting funding, and it's been cut, and how much has been cut.
It was interesting. The last person who was in, because she was talking about CDBG. You guys are talking about CDBG, and we used to get back in the day. I don't know, a couple years ago, we were getting upwards of $60,000 from the city to help fund our program. And then as the years went on, and different mayors and all the stuff, it kept going down and down. And then last year, we were supposed to get 10 or 20, but then we just didn't get anything at all. I mean, the CDBG period ended, and we weren't funded at all. And this stemmed from the fact that Roberta, who's the executive director, she's also, at the time, she was a city council president. She was a city council member, and she was a city council president. And she'd been a council member for a number of years, and we were still getting our funding through CDBG. But all of a sudden, there was this conflict of interest that happened, saying that if Roberta's a city council person, she shouldn't be accepting funding from the city for a program that she runs. But I think it was 10 years ago, this was brought up, this conflict of interest. When she started as a city council person, she wanted to make sure this would not be a conflict. So there was this meeting happened, and the city council got together with HUD, and from what I understand, they came to a resolution that said as long as Roberta didn't vote when it came down to money going into her program, then there would be no conflict. So that's how it was for the longest time. And then
that's how it still is in a lot of the council.
Yeah, that's right. But supposedly this conflict came up again.
And I just want to say that as a former City Councilwoman in Yonkers, you're saying that's how it is? That's basically...
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I had my own non-for-profit, and I was on the board of a couple of non-for-profits, and there were some things that I just did not vote on, simply because it would have been a conflict.
Okay.
It's normal, standard procedure.
Okay, and I'm being told that Roberta Apuzzo was given a waiver. What does that mean? She was given a waiver?
Well, I think that I'm not entirely sure, but that's probably
That was basically it.
they probably
Okay.
said it's okay. Like
It's
for you to
okay
be
as long as she
Right, as long as
recuses
she's
herself from
right.
any votes where.
Okay, so
So we don't know exactly. Now, of course, there's a lot of political bad blood and all that stuff going on, and people disagree, and so there was some thought that maybe Thomas had brought this up, that there might be a conflict of interest, which started the whole thing. But we don't really know what happened. And he had actually come to speak with her one day. She wasn't in the office, and he sat with me, and he told me that it wasn't him, it was HUD. They're the ones who brought up this conflict of interest, and so.
Well, when that story came out, and excuse me, I really don't remember the details. I believe we covered it on Black Westchester, and I believe at the time, again, HUD said that there was no conflict of interest.
That's what that's what we
I mean,
thought too.
in the
And
current, under Mayor Thomas, when this came up,
we had all the paperwork too from the
Did-
previous when they had the resolution saying there was no conflict. They had come to this resolution.
and Caitlin Gleason, who also works with the Soup Kitchen, is adding, they acknowledged her, they being HUD, acknowledged her position and stated as long as she didn't vote for anything to do with it, it wasn't a conflict of interest. So
Right.
And
just
Did he?
confirming.
Okay, good.
And I was just going to say that some of that correspondence was circulated to people in the, news, local
Right.
news outfits, and I actually read some of the original correspondence between your mother and HUD about this issue, and indeed, I can confirm that HUD's initial ruling and subsequent rulings is that this posed no serious
Conflict.
Yeah.
Right.
I just
So-
wanted, and I'm glad you said that, because again, I do so many stories, I couldn't remember detail, but I know we also covered the story because we were given information by the mayor's office, whether it was the mayor or not, but the mayor's office, as well as the rest of the press, that, of the situation, so.
Right.
Now, did he tell you that he would revisit it once she was out of the council, and have you?
Well, here's the thing. We HUD told, or whoever represents HUD in City Hall said that for us to get our money now, and we can write for food. Basically, all we can write for is food. We can't write for our operational expenses like our rent and our supplies and our liability insurance and all the other things that we need to keep the place running. They're like, if you want money from the government or from HUD, then it has to go for food only. It has to directly benefit the client. That's how they defined it. But I wanted a better definition of what a direct benefit is, because, a lot of things directly benefit the client, not just the food. Everyone who works there and keeps the place in operation, I feel, is still a direct benefit. But they have their own definition of it.
Have you applied for the food, though?
Well, we applied,
Food
but
grant?
this is the other part of it. They told us that they wanted to start taking. They wanted us to start taking eligibility criteria from our clients, meaning they wanted us to start getting household incomes from our guests, proving that they're low-income individuals, in order to get the money.
Now, did HUD say this, or the city of Mount Vernon said this?
This is what the representative through HUD who works in the city, they told us that that's what they needed. But we refused to do that because we've never done that. And, our guests who come to eat, we want to respect their anonymity.
Now, I want to
so-
go back further, because now my memory is getting better. I did specifically hear Mayor Richard Thomas say publicly and to me that if she wants, and this is last year when she was city council president, because I asked specifically why was their funding cut, and he said, of course the HUD thing and everything. He said, but it's an easy solution. She can step down from being the head of it, and we'll give her that money today. And that was what he said. And then, if that's the case, as of January 1st, she's no longer been on the city council. So I guess we need to revisit now what's the problem, because he did say that, he was told it was a conflict of interest. All she has to do is step down. If she really cared about the soup kitchen and their funding, she would step down so they can continue to get funding.
But they're putting new specifications on it now.
Right.
Well, I can't really speak to that because that's a lot of. I've heard the same thing.
Well, I'm telling you what he told the press, and I'm telling you what he told me personally.
Did he tell the press that?
Well, he said that in public. He said that on public. He publicly has said that several times in his newsletters. I'll have to look that up and actually share that information where. But he's told me that, though. Like when Black Westchester went to ask the question, that's what was told. That's what was said at a press conference type of thing. That's what's been said at his email. However he communicates to the public, that was said. Or if she really was concerned, all she got to do is step down. She stepped down. There's no conflict that we'll give her the money today. All she could do is step down. And at that point, she was only going to be. She wasn't rerunning for election, and she only had 2-3 more months of.
She had 2 years left, I think, to get to be pensioned. I think.
No. I'm saying she only had 2-3 months.
Left in
her term, and she was not running. You know what I'm saying? Because that was her pushback. You know what I'm saying? So the public answer, I'm getting clarity in this because when you say stuff like that, a lot of the public say, well, why don't she just step down if she wants them to have? And a lot of the public, repeated what they were told.
I think there was a lot of disagreement on his budget.
Caitlin said yes, he said that. So she's saying,
yeah.
I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
The soup kitchen plays a central role in feeding Mount Vernon's hungry population.
Yeah.
And what kind of impact has the reduction of the grants that the soup kitchen has so long relied on from the city government had on your ability to fulfill this outstanding need of many Mount Vernon residents?
Well, here's the thing. We have been able to, and this is one of the things that I started a year or two ago, trying to get more people to cook meals for us and supply food for us so that we can cut those costs down tremendously. And it's become a huge hit with the local communities because I've got lots of people now. They want to make meals for us. They cook it at home. They get other people together in a group, and everyone cooks one thing, and they cook another. They all come together, and they'll deliver it to us. And if I get a handful of those groups to do that per month, then I only have to supply food for a couple of the nights.
So
it's
you used to do the cooking there, cook the food there.
Right. We'd have to order the food. We cook the food, and we serve the food like any other place would do it. This was just my idea of how do we cut costs on food? How do we save money because the money's not coming in? And we could use this money for the other things, the operational costs, the rents, and all the other things that we need, the supplies. So to answer the question, it hasn't affected it in a way where we can't serve quality food the way we have. It's just affected the operational costs, like the people who work there.
I want to,
because if we don't get paid, we can't run the program. Then no one's going to get, unless someone wants to come in and volunteer their time full time to run the program. That would be amazing. But who wants to do that?
Right.
Someone needs to be there.
Before you say that, I do want to say, Black Westchester was also told, and Brother Damon gave me this information. They were told that I don't know where they were in Yonkers, but they came across the Yonkers, the person who runs the soup kitchen in Yonkers, and said a number of people from Mount Vernon are starting to come to Yonkers, and it's increasing their demands. You know what I'm saying? So that's one of the way, and then they didn't know about the funding thing. They was wondering why all these Mount Vernon people were coming. They were feeding them, but it was increasing their demands. So it has gone to other municipalities. I don't know about any place other than Yonkers, but I do know it increased the number of people from Mount Vernon going to Yonkers to then eat, to at their soup kitchen. So
I'm not really sure about that either, because I know that New Rochelle has a soup kitchen too.
Right.
And a lot of our clients who come, they're on foot. So
yeah,
most of them are, it would be hard for them to get to Yonkers if they didn't have transportation.
Do you take donations of food as well?
Yeah, of course. Yes. take donations of food, supplies.
So I just want to state my position again. While we can't cure the problem, I wanted to use my platform to bring attention to the problem, and I wanted to use whatever influence we do have to get as many people to come out on Thursday, October 19th. I'll put the flyer up in a minute. It'll be all over Facebook and everything. So we can have this function, and we can give a donation, a sizable donation to the soup kitchen, and we can be helpful that way. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure it's going to take. That's not. That alone is not going to keep this program running by itself. But we wanted to do something. It's all
those little bits are. That's all. All the little bits help. You know.
Right.
You know, whether it's you hold a function and you want to give us a little portion of that, it's all going to help. You know, the more times we get people to do things like that, it's only going to help. You know what I mean?
I'm curious about Jeffrey Meyer.
Well, I don't know. That would be his question for his mother. You set that up, that call, and his mother.
But it was
has
about
talked
the
to
soup kitchen.
Right. His mother. But I'm saying his mother's the one that had the conversation. I don't know if he knows about that.
There's only one way to find out, don't you think?
Go ahead, ask your question.
Bring it up.
We gave your mom a telephone number of a gentleman named Jeffrey Meyer.
Okay.
That he gets truckloads of food and stuff like that.
A food pantry, right?
He does food pantries in Yonkers and the vegetables and the stuff like that. And we linked him up with your mom. I was just curious if anything happened with that.
I don't know how long ago was that.
That was just a couple weeks ago.
That was recently, and I asked Caitlin, because I went through Caitlin to give her the number. She said your mother
they
and
did
Jeffrey.
speak.
They
Right
speak.
there.
Yeah, but what was the outcome, Caitlin?
Okay, all I heard was that it was good.
It was good.
That's all I've been. So
Well, that's
again,
good. That's
so
good
so
news.
Caitlin. So the bottom of the question is, Lorraine has been asking me this over and over, and I've been telling her, well, she said they contacted him and it was good. You know, so she was like, what does the good mean? So I could not answer that because I did not know. So that's
Only because I like to know if Jeffrey Meyer was able to help, because Jeffrey Meyer is a wonderful person. I would like to give him his kudos as well.
She said Jeffrey was supposed to get back to them when he returned from his trip.
Oh, he's still away.
He was away. Yeah.
He's away.
So that answers that question. So I you know, my point is we have to support. We had YCOP on here, and that's a service that does a lot of work for the kids, and I think that is very important that we support these organizations. We have you on here because of the services that y'all provide, and that's how we can help our community. We always talk about all the things that's wrong. Black Westerners always gets credited with only bringing up negative things and not, nothing that helps the city. We do these things, and this is why I wanted you to come on. I wanted people to hear more about the soup kitchen. We are having this fundraiser on Thursday, October 18th. I'm sorry. October 19th, Friday, is actually Lorraine's birthday. That's why I keep saying the 19th.
Yeah.
So we're having it
you're
on.
thinking about me and my birthday? Really?
So it's Thursday, October 18th. I will give you all the information. Everybody should come out if they can. There'll be an online thing where you can make a donation if you don't want to go, or if you don't have enough to maybe buy a ticket, but you also want to make a donation. There'll be an avenue for you to do that as well. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you definitely want to bring about the soup kitchen? Include or
no? I mean, I just thanks again for your guys' support, and we really appreciate it. And if anyone wants to check us out online, we are at www.csasoupkitchen.org.
Okay.
And if you can make a donation through there, or just check us out, give us a call. You could look at our calendar, sign up for volunteering.
Now I was gonna say, so how do you do that volunteer? Like, say people listening say, well, I want to volunteer my time to serve the people or do whatever. How do they go about that?
Just give me a call. I deal with all that stuff, and you call me, and we could discuss whether you want to bring in a group, you want to do a meal, do you want to come in by yourself, bring in your kids. There's no age limit. I bring my son is 3 years old. I have him hand out juices whenever he has to.
I want to, and I want to say this on the air because I've said this to Roberta when she was at City Council. I personally wanted to volunteer, and they were trying to set up a Black Westchester night where. So we're gonna work with y'all and do a Black Westchester night where Black Westchester staff actually comes and serves the community that comes in,
Once
and
a month.
whatever we can provide.
great.
Let me get it first.
That's
She's
it.
already got me once a month.
Yo, I'm gonna
Let me
provide
just-
my favorite dish, fresh water.
No, but so I definitely want to do this, and I think I've been saying that I personally wanted to volunteer, and my schedule hasn't been able to do that. There's several times I wanted to, but we need to do a Black West, because I know y'all have done that with other organizations. We need to do a Black West just tonight where we come in and we actually serve and whatever it is you need us to do.
Yeah.
So let's set that up offline as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Everybody come to the the fundraiser on Thursday, October 18th. You can see it. I'm sure Caitlin will put it out through your social media, and we will put it out through all our social media. And I hope to see everyone there come out and do something to support. So I thank you for coming, and I definitely want to continue this conversation. I'd like to revisit this in a few months to see the progression, to see how y'all are doing.
Hopefully we'll still be there.
Well, yes.
God willing, you will be.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Caitlin said it would be a great idea. She said, and she also said we are very grateful to the help and connection, Lorraine and AJ, talking about Jeffrey Myers, I guess. So.
And Dr. Bob put the information about the gala.
Oh,
Wait.
that's
That's Dr. Bob's other stuff. That's something else.
That's something else. We'll talk about that. And someone said contact Denzel. I don't know. No, I'm just saying somebody wrote that, so I'm just saying. But
everyone always says, talk to Denzel. He'll help you.
Well, you know what? People help those. Now, I will say this. The mayor had put out a email blast recently. It had to do with something totally different and about getting grants for the city or something, and that the people who have these grants will help cities that help themselves. I just want to deal with the help themselves part. This is one of those opportunities where the community can help itself. You understand what I'm saying? We don't need to call the Denzels and stuff like that. But those type of people, and I'm not speaking for Denzel, they are quicker to help when they see the community helping themselves. Even if, it's just pennies that you have and it's just nickels on, it's just silver, you know what I'm saying? Or, a dollar here and a dollar there. But when you see a community that is doing what it can to help situations like that, it makes those type of people be like, well, let me add what I'm doing on top of what they're doing. Mm-hmm. People don't want to just come and bail you out, but people are more eager to act when the community is helping themselves. And we talk about a lot of things that's wrong. We can't figure out the whole tribalism and infighting and the politics and all that right now. But this is something we as a community can all do to help feed those less fortunate. And I hope that everybody who's listening will do something. It doesn't have to be coming to the fundraiser. It could be volunteering your time. It could be volunteering some food or calling them and asking them what they need that you can do. So we all need to get involved.
That's why the Make a Meal from Home program has been really awesome for some people because we only serve from 5 to 5:45 Tuesday through Friday. So a lot of times it's a hard time for people to get there if they're working or whatever. They're picking up their kids. They got to make food for their own family. So it's just a way for people to volunteer their time off-site. You don't have to be there to volunteer. There's a lot of other ways to help out, whether it's fundraising or supply drives, food drives, or making food, stuff like that.
Well, we're definitely going to follow up with you. We're going to move on to our next guest.
I want to cook some rice and beans.
We're going to have that conversation. We're going to move on to our next guest. This has been a full show, but we're going to talk more offline.
All right, great.
And follow up, and I'm sure Caitlin will make sure that we are all connected. So
she will.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you also. There's been several times when your mother was city council that I needed a quote from her that you were the one that I went through and you got it from her and got it to me. So I thank you every time I needed a quote. It was either Caitlin went and put me in touch with you or you got her quote for me. So
we got to help each other out, right?
All right now.
Okay.
Thank you
so much,
brother.
It was a pleasure, man.
Bye. Nice meeting you.
And we're moving on to our next guest, who has been in the green room waiting ever so patiently. Civil rights attorney, you saw him briefly, Michael Sussman. He is running on the Green Party for New York State Attorney General. You have seen some of the candidates that ran on the Democratic primary. and he is running in the general election, and we want to welcome him to the show once again. So first, let me say, Lorraine brought me to an Impact event, where I think is the Mediterranean Political Action Committee, and it had all of the candidates there, and you gave a very impassionate speech, if you will, that moved a lot of people. A lot of people afterwards was like, "Wow, you were one of the most." Out of all the speakers, everybody, made their points and stuff. Senator Stuart Cousin spoke, Shelley Myers spoke, and the two candidates for Shelley Myers' former seat, Nada Sage and
Joe
Pinion spoke. Tish James spoke, and then you spoke. Well, and you were one of the most memorable speakers that night. You can go on my page personally, and I Facebook Live, and you can watch the speech. So I want to welcome you to the show. Now, first things first, why the Green Party? And I asked Joe Pinion a similar question. Does he think, as a black Republican in the Democratic area, that he could actually win this race? Do you actually think you can win the New York State Attorney General as a Green Party candidate?
Let's address both questions one at a time. There is a duopoly of corruption, as I've explained it in New York, and as many people understand. When I go around
now, for those that don't say, what's a duopoly?
Duopoly means two entities are acting in concert. Two entities are acting in a manner which is coordinated. And in New York State, there's no doubt in my mind, and I think in most observers' mind, that the Republican and Democratic parties have operated as a duopoly. The state Senate in New York has been controlled by the Republican Party, even though this is a state that's overwhelmingly Democratic. The reason for that is that under both Mario Cuomo and Andrew Cuomo, neither Cuomo wanted a Democratic state Senate, even though they're both Democrats. Why? Because they felt that would lessen the degree of gubernatorial power that each of them had. It doesn't serve the people, it disserves the people. That's politics, it's not corruption. Corruption is a bipartisan matter in New York. New York is what's called a pay-to-play state. A pay-to-play state means if you want to do business with the government, and while we don't have socialism in America, we have a creeping government. Our government's in everything. You can't say one thing the government's not in. If you're a private party, private corporation, and you want to get anywhere in America, you better cozy up the government. That's pay-to-play. So the simple answer to your first question about why I'm a Green Party member is I got disgusted after 45 years as a Democrat with the Democratic Party. My values are certainly not attuned to the Republican Party at any point, certainly not now. So the only alternative I had was a third party, and that third party in New York to me is the Green Party, which we can discuss later, the values of the party and why. In terms of your question about winning and losing, it's a very circular argument. In my opinion, humbly, because I am actually very humble about this and I don't like to toot my own horn, but I do have a 40-year career at high level as a civil rights lawyer in New York and beyond, a national career. My credentials for the position of Attorney General dwarf, quite honestly, those of the other two candidates. In my opinion, and most observers who are objective, it's really not even close. The question is, will I get the kind of coverage? Will the other two major party candidates debate and appear with me and allow for people to compare our records and what our vision is for the office, which to me are the two central issues. What do you bring to it, and what do you want to do with it? What's your vision, and what can you be expected to do based on your track record? So can I win? It depends whether in the next month I get the kind of coverage that you're providing me, quite frankly, an opportunity to state my case. And then it's up to people. Then it's up to individual voters to decide what they want to do, what they value.
Now, a lot of people, first off, Damon K. Jones, the other host of the show, he could not be here, and he wanted me to tell you, sorry I could not be there. You have my support. I know your history. I know the work you've done. He said, yes, Mike has my vote, and he said, to what you just said, exactly, he is the most qualified. That was
coming from Mr. Jones, in all honesty, that's a great compliment. And look, I'm being a civil rights lawyer. I'm not naive to the situation. I do understand the situation. I understand that there's never been an African-American state attorney general. I understand there's never been a woman New York State Attorney General other than the acting Attorney General at this point.
Right.
I understand we're in a very racially and gender sensitive time. I'm not blind to these things. I've been doing that work. I understand it. Notwithstanding that, I'm putting myself out because I genuinely feel that you need certain qualifications for this job. They're not constitutional qualifications. The only constitutional qualification is you have to be 30 years old and live in New York for 5 years. You don't even have to be a lawyer. That's Article 5 of the New York State Constitution.
Wow. Now that I didn't know.
Okay, well, that's what I'm trying to... So there's no real requirements or qualifications that are set anywhere. In my humble opinion, a significant track record as an attorney in two particular areas, civil rights and environmental law, are critical right now in our state. And I can explain why further. But to me, that's very important that I have the track record in those areas, and my opponents, plural, do not. And we can, again, discuss that to the extent anybody wants to.
So, Mike,
Yeah.
Even though some of us here are a bit of political insiders and may have some familiarity with your career in some of the major cases that you've litigated, that's not necessarily true of our audience. Could you highlight some of the most important cases that you've litigated and what you think the long-term legal impact was?
I started in the Department of Justice in 1978 out of Harvard Law School. At the Department of Justice, I was in what they called the honors program, education and housing were the two areas I specialized in out of law school. I began by litigating major school desegregation cases around the country, which culminated in both Cleveland and Chicago, two very large city school districts. We were able to significantly desegregate to the extent it was possible and improve the quality of education for youngsters. Routinely in those school districts, African American students were shuffled, literally shuffled and steered into non-academic classes. They were well overrepresented in special education by 2 and 3 to 1. The discipline rates applied to them were extraordinary, and we focused on those kinds of measures of discrimination and inequality. In 1981, I left the Department of Justice because the Attorney General of the United States then was a man named William French Smith. He said at his maiden address to the American Bar Association on February 23rd, 1981, so I go back a long way, that the most imperiled group were white males, and that the Department of Justice had to shift its attention to defending the rights of white men. I thought that was an absurd proposition, and I went to the National Office of the NAACP. When I got there, I was assigned almost immediately to the Yonkers case. The Yonkers case had been initiated by the Department of Justice at the complaint of the Yonkers NAACP branch in December 80. But remember, now the Department of Justice had shifted from Carter to Reagan, and the case was imperiled. So I brought the case to the NAACP National Office and said, we have to intervene. We have to be a litigating party because it's not clear that the Justice Department is going to pursue the case. So then for the next 26 years, I was lead counsel for the NAACP in that case. And that case was the first case in the United States that held a municipality responsible for the racial segregation its housing discrimination caused in schools. Everybody knows, and it's self-evident, if you have municipal housing policies that discriminate and segregate and ghettoize people, one impact of that will be school segregation.
Right.
As part of the Yonkers case, not only did I achieve orders which significantly increased integration in the schools in Yonkers and housing patterns in Yonkers, I also got $300 million from the state of New York in 2002, culminating 14 years of litigation against the state of New York for its contribution to segregation. I also got approximately $35 million from HUD to build housing outside of the more ghettoized areas in Yonkers. Now, apart from that, I have a long history in doing sexual harassment cases. In 1985-86, I did one of the first cases in the federal courts on sexual harassment, the Carrero case, which was against the New York City Housing Authority, which employed a woman as a boiler room technician, and during her training, the male supervisor literally stripped in front of her and asked her to perform various sexual acts, and if she wouldn't, said she wouldn't get promoted and wouldn't pass her probation. I brought that case to court and established the proposition that not only was he responsible, but the housing authority was responsible for his behavior. For 30 years, I've done cases in special education law, where I've worked for parents and children who've not gotten proper services in our public schools. There's a statute called the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, and I've been enforcing that. I've worked on many police brutality cases, including the D.J. Henry case. D.J. Henry was a Pace University student who was shot to death here in this county. I was the attorney for D.J. Henry, and we got a significant settlement in his case. So I've litigated voting rights cases, housing discrimination cases, religious cases, a whole slew, hundreds and hundreds of civil rights cases. I've argued more than 400 appeals in our appellate courts, and I've handled more than 1,000 cases as a trial lawyer. So that's a brief description. We could go on all night, but my philosophy is today's the first day of the rest of my life.
Absolutely.
I don't try to talk about I did this, I did that, I did the next thing. I don't find it seemly. I think it's important, though, when you're looking for an attorney general, to understand what litigation background other people have, because it's a litigation office. There are 672 lawyers and a $215 million budget. And that money is spent litigating cases, and too much of it is spent defending the state of New York against lawsuits brought against its discriminatory practices. Let me give you an example in terms of my own history. In 2001, and this I think is very important to those listening, the state of New York adopted the battery test, which most people don't even know about. The battery test was a promotional test which was used by 83 state agencies for anyone who wanted a promotion in the civil service. That has huge impact. Huge impact. It had a profound racially disparate impact, which means when black and Hispanic people took the test, they failed it or scored much more poorly than did Caucasians. The question then becomes, is the test valid? Valid means, does the test actually correlate or relate to successful performance of jobs for which you're getting a promotion?
Right.
There are things called validation studies which test validity. There was no validation study. Under law started in the 1970s, the early 70s, the test should have been struck and never used because it had disparate impact and it was not validated. New York State used it. I challenged it in 2004. It took me 7 years. I got $45 million for the 4,700 people I represented, and I got the test struck and never used again. If I were Attorney General, it would take 15 minutes to strike that test, not 7 years. Because I would say to those people who are in the Department of Civil Service using the test, where is your validation study? And if they did not have one, as a lawyer who's done work in this area, I would immediately know, you can't use the test. Get rid of the test. Compensate those who've been negatively affected. So what I bring to the office is a wealth of experience in the real world of civil rights and environmental litigation. I've done a huge amount of environmental litigation also, trying to protect the natural resources of our state against fracking, against the fracking infrastructure, against wetland destruction, which is rampant upstate. I live in the Mid-Hudson Valley. So I bring to the table a huge amount of practical legal experience. I'm not a politician, though. I believe this office has to be independent of the governor. I don't believe this office should be controlled by either political party, because I said earlier, both parties are dancing in a duopoly of corruption. And in order to get rid of that corruption, you can't have the Attorney General of New York on the same slate as the governor, dependent on the governor, politically. Won't work.
So, yeah. What would be your highest priorities as the New York State Attorney General? And specifically, I want to know if you have in mind any kind of systemic reforms of our current legal system here in New York State. I do know that there has been various kinds of reforms. I'm curious, what you have in mind.
I have a lot in mind, quite honestly, as you can
I'm
understand.
sure.
I've thought about this a great deal, though I'm not a candidate who necessarily would have even been doing this, but for the strange circumstances of 2018. We need bail reform in New York.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody understands what we have in New York. We have a system where poor people, who are overwhelmingly minority in our state, caught up in the criminal justice system. There's a presumption of innocence, yet bail is often set for them. The bail is set in a manner that they cannot meet, and they sit in jail for a very long time, compared often to the exposure they have for the crime that they're accused of. This is a horrendous injustice, and it needs to be cured. We need to have bail funds set up in every single county so that people who are not flight risk can be bailed out and have their day in court. What often happens, just so we're clear, is people plead guilty, not because they're guilty, but because they're told all the time that you'd have to serve, you've already served, you might as well just plead guilty and walk out of here today. Now, they walk out with a record, which is a burden and an albatross to them, but they're told by their lawyer that's the best strategy for them. We should never have a system of justice like that. So that, to me, is very important. Campaign finance reform is obviously critical in New York. In every state of the state message, the governor starts out, and within about 10 minutes, he starts talking about campaign finance reform and how critical it is. But in no session of the legislature has campaign finance reform of any meaning passed. I've written a campaign finance reform piece of legislation, and as Attorney General, I think it's critical to rooting out corruption to get that passed, because the way we have failed to have campaign finance reform is integrally related to political corruption in our state. Third, we have to have clear legislation which gives the Attorney General of New York the obligation to root out corruption in the state. Do you know what's going on right now? I mean, let me give you 2 minutes on this because it's very important for people to understand it. Every single major prosecution in New York State of a corrupt state official or an allegedly corrupt state official, Silver, Sampson, Scalos, Percoco, Buffalo Billions, and 42 legislators in the last 15 years. Every case has been brought by the federal government. You know what that means? That means that Donald Trump and Jeff Sessions are in charge of policing the integrity of New York State's political system. Are you comfortable with that? I'm not comfortable with that. That's absurd. When New York started changing that, okay, we started with the Moreland Commission about 4 or 5 years ago. Mr. Cuomo supported the Moreland Commission. But as soon as the Moreland Commission started doing what it was charged to do, which was investigate executive branch corruption, the governor took his foot and he put his foot right on the Moreland Commission. It no longer exists. So we need clear legislative authority that gives the Attorney General of the state of New York the responsibility and obligation to ensure there is no corruption in our political system. We don't have that. That's a hugely important step. And of course, neither political party is going to advocate for it or even talk about it. You were there Thursday night. I raised the issue. Ms. James didn't talk for one moment about corruption in New York State. Why not? She's on Andy Cuomo's ticket. How's she going to talk about it? What's she going to say?
Yep.
So this is where there's a huge difference. And I think for the voters, to go back to the question Mr. Woodson asked me, what a Green Party, how can you win? Because voters understand, they're not stupid. They understand what we have in New York. And they understand how it serves them. They understand that we don't have a meritocracy if what you have is pay to play. The best person doesn't get the job. The person who can pay the most money to get the job gets the job. Those are two very different things.
Damon wanted to ask you the question, what is your position on prosecutorial? There you go, misconduct.
Well, when DJ Henry was shot to death, within about 2 months, I went to Albany with Angela and Dan Roy Henry, and we sat with Governor Patterson, and we argued very strongly that there needs to be a special prosecutor in New York for every case of police shooting, that having local district attorneys expected to prosecute police officers with whom they cooperate and whose departments they need to work on for every single case is structurally incoherent. If I need you in your department for every single case I do, it's much harder for me to prosecute you than someone totally independent who can look at the facts of the case objectively without the concern that I'm going to impugn you or cause myself a problem in all these cases where I'm relying on you. That's the current situation structurally in 2010. So I argued with the governor, and the governor did nothing. Several years later, we have limited implementation of what I was then advocating for, but only in homicide cases. In my view, any time there is a serious allegation of police misconduct with regard to civilians, that has to be investigated outside of the scope of that district attorney. It has to be investigated at a state level. Now, in terms of prosecutorial discretion, is that what Mr.
Misconduct.
So prosecutorial misconduct is brushed aside in New York. And what I mean by brushed aside, when it occurs, the way we handle it is by, if it's very serious, giving the victims millions of dollars. Central Park jogger case is an example. profound prosecutorial misconduct. Those responsible not hold accountable in any way, but the city pays millions and millions of dollars to the victims. My view, the prosecutors who engage in the corruption of our political system should be prosecuted for their behavior, because they are robbing the system of central aspects of its integrity. That's as big a crime as you can commit. Because what you're doing is you're taking people's lives in your hands and you're shaping those lives for your own often political advantage and benefit. That's shameful. Should never be tolerated. Right now, the doctrines in the law are so broad and give prosecutors so much discretion and so much protection that even when they do something terrible in pursuing a case, you cannot civilly hold them responsible. They have what's called prosecutorial immunity, or absolute immunity, for anything they do in a prosecution. That kind of doctrine has to be changed. Where they act in a manner which is plainly contrary to law, particularly where you can demonstrate an intent to do that based on race, political advantage, or the like, they should be held personally accountable. They should be stripped of their bar membership for doing things like that, and they should be subject to prosecution.
Absolutely. We have another question from Charles Stern. He said, what do you think campaign reform should look like?
Mr. Stern can go onto my campaign website, Elect Sussman, New York State AG, and find the whole piece of legislation. The long and short of it is that individuals who qualify for the ballot by collecting sufficient signatures, whatever their political party, should be assured for each race, and the amount would differ depending on the race, a certain sum of public financing. And they should be disallowed from using private funds, certainly corporate and LLC funds, to run races. That's what it looks like. In other words, if I'm on the Green Party line and I'm the party's designee, or if I collect sufficient signatures to be the Democratic Party nominee, I would get a certain amount of money for the primary, and then the winner would get a certain amount of money to use in the general election. I also don't think elections should be endless, and I don't think the amount of money should be so great as to flood the airwaves day after day with negative messaging about your opponent. The amount of money should be reasonable to run a campaign which informs the voters of your position. But it should not be so great, $20, $30 million, as to dominate and blow away your opponent. So my legislation is written. The gentleman can review it on the website, but those are the highlights.
He asked an earlier question, too, that I didn't get to, okay. And he says, what do you think about the validity of K through 8 exams the exams used by the public schools? I guess that's...
Yeah, he's talking about the Common Core examinations. And that's a complex subject. In New York, we are using, at several grade levels, tests to assess the preparedness of our children. They're called proficiency tests. And students can score from 1 to 4, highly proficient to not proficient. A lot of people criticize the tests because they don't feel the tests are fair, because students have very different educational opportunities. So they're being judged, in a sense, unfairly, and they also question the content of some of the tests. I agree with all of that, but this is my view. In Rochester today, 5% of the children are proficient, according to those tests, in reading and math. 5%. In Buffalo, 11%. In Syracuse, 12%. In Albany, 11%. In Yonkers, 21%. And I'm aggregating all the numbers from the different levels, but that's what you get. Those numbers are a shocking indictment of public education. Even if the tests are not perfectly valid, and I agree with him, they're not. There is still such profound educational inequality in our state that it is replicating the class and race divisions generation to generation. Replicating means repeating. So what we have here, we have here, and we have here, and we have here, and it continues. We have to have a profound commitment to something that Federal Judge Frank Battisti, who did the Cleveland school desegregation case, said to me very often. The public schools must be a great leavener. They must help people who have less opportunities advance in the society, not simply perpetuate inequality. Our schools in New York are perpetuating inequality. And I think that those tests give an insight into that, which should not be discarded because the tests are imperfect, which they are.
Is the use of the Common Core test to pinpoint those school systems that are performing below proficiency sufficient if they're not coupled with additional reforms?
No, and that's the heart of what I'm saying. And they're not sufficient. They permit an identification of the profound inequality, which, of course, the Campaign for Fiscal Equity has been pointing out in New York now for more than a decade. Michael Rebell from Yale, probably almost 20 years. And this is a very important point I want to make tonight so everyone understands it. If and when I'm Attorney General, and you asked about priorities of the office, one of the central priorities of the office is that the office will not knee-jerk defend inappropriate state agency behavior. I used the battery test, an example of that a little while ago. That's a test developed by a state agency, Division and Department of Civil Service. It was an inappropriate test. It was challenged. Rather than say to that agency, you may not behave in that way, which is what should have been said, the Attorney General defended the test for 7 years, defended the indefensible. Mm-hmm. When a woman comes and has been sexually harassed, when a woman or man comes and they've been racially discriminated against, the Attorney General should investigate that quickly and make a judgment whether that has happened. And if that judgment is yes, it has, then that person should have their rights restored and a remedy instituted immediately. I don't want the sister waiting 7 and 8 years for redress. I don't want you, if you've been discriminated against, having to sit in court for years and years till you get a remedy. Improper, incorrect. I want there to be cleansing. There's not going to be any knee-jerk defense. So I bring that back to the Campaign for Fiscal Equity and the funding issue in New York. Mm-hmm. Because what the Campaign for Fiscal Equity did was specifically to say the funding formulas in New York are highly discriminatory against certain cities. Mm-hmm. What did the state do? The state AG's been defending it for 15 years. And what's been the result? No progress. I would be at the bargaining table with my friend Michael Rebell and his team in 5 minutes. Let's get this resolved because you're fundamentally right. The state's position is indefensible. And I'm not afraid to say that. In the environmental area, the same thing is true. There'll be no knee-jerk defense of racism and sexism by me.
So, are you proposing then, if you are elected to the New York State Attorney General's office, to really break with?
Side with the victims. To put it very simply, side with the victims.
Yes.
I'm not about perpetuating state agencies, and I've sued many of them, and I know how they work inside and out. I'm not about allowing them to continue in the name of the state using taxpayer dollars, both to discriminate and then to have defense of their discrimination by another agency, the state AG's office. It won't continue. Every case will be reviewed in 45 days by me. I have that kind of intellectual ability and energy, and I will use it. I will use it. I'm not going to sit on the sideline. I'm not going to let line attorneys who are just dragging on and on. That's not the way it's going to work. Why? I'll tell you why. There are real live people at the front of every one of those cases. Plaintiff. Okay, Miss Lopez, Mr. Woodson, whatever the name is. They're the real live people. And I've got to determine whether that real live person has a arguably or apparently valid claim, and if they do, it's got to be adjusted. There's mandatory mediation in our federal courts right now that the state Attorney General's office, when representing state agencies, is supposed to be participating in. They don't participate. We're not settling. Basically violating the court order. We're not settling. We're just litigating forever. Not with their money, but with our money.
Right.
And to the detriment of the victim often. That has to stop. Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
I have a comment and then a question from Gail Baxter. Mm-hmm. Comment was, Michael Sussman has the best qualifications for Attorney General based upon his age and experience. Many see him as an icon for social and civic rights change. This is not being said to undermine the other candidates running, but to point out the fact that as an attorney who represented NAACP in the Yonkers in the historical desegregation litigation and its settlement, he has helped change the trajectory of education and housing in Yonkers. Unfortunately, given the passage of time and change in ethnic demographics, in Yonkers, many African Americans in Yonkers believe and comment that we are back to square one when it comes to equality and access. What is your view, one, and what is your number one action if elected?
When elected.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying when.
Oh, okay.
So Gail, thank you for your comment, and I'm humbled by it, as I am by Damon's comment earlier. I really am fundamentally opposed to self-promotion, which makes it hard for me as a political candidate. I like to talk about ideas and issues, but I don't really like to talk about myself. But let me just say this. When I was doing the Yonkers case, and Gail, you know this better than anyone because you and I were very closely allied doing the case, though we did not always agree, and you were an avid fighter for your point of view, which I respect and respected. I used to say all the time, and you can attest to this, and please do, that the lawsuit and the legal system do not operate in a vacuum. The strength of a civil rights lawsuit that seeks systemic change is always defined by the strength of the community movement that supports it, that often animated it and caused it to begin with. And that's true in Yonkers, too. What happened in Yonkers is that there became too much of a focus on the case in the legal system and not enough community advocacy for the ideals that the case represented, which was equality and non-discrimination in schools and housing. So my view of your point is that it's valid, and I'm embarrassed that I wasn't able to motivate, if you will, the community to stay involved at a deep level over the many years since. It's 11 years since I've really been in the Yonkers case, and I know there's been a deterioration in many regards, and it causes me distress. Cases have a certain life. 26 years is a long life for a case. What needed to continue and what needs to happen is there needs to be community advocacy for the objectives of the case, and that has to be taken up by members of the community whose children are now affected. So I take your point. As I've said about my own priorities, there are many priorities. The most serious priority has to be restoring integrity to the government of the state of New York. We have a terrible absence of integrity. This governor is locked into corruption left, right, and otherwise, whether it's taking money from religious organizations in Curious Joel to create statutes in their favor, whether it's taking money from health organizations to give them special consideration for huge amounts of state money, whether it's Percoco, his top aide, greasing the skids for power plants, whether it's the Buffalo Billions, his administration is profoundly corrupt. I have 7 children. They're bright children. They know what's going on, as do many other children, young people in the state. They're turned off and alienated by this level of corruption. I don't view myself as a hero, believe me, but I do view myself as a catalyst who is willing, because nobody owns me and no one's ever owned me through all the litigation I've done, I'm willing to state what I believe to be true. I'm waiting for the other candidates to come to the plate with their analysis. Letitia James, as I said the other night, I agree with her about 90% of the time on social issues. You're talking about the NRA, you're talking about women's right to choose, whatever those issues. She and I are in concert. Where we're not in concert is I don't believe she has the independence to take on the powers that be in this state and to try to right our political system of the profound corruption we have. And until and unless we do that, we have no pedestal whatsoever. Government needs a moral pedestal to operate and try to harness people's energy. If government is corrupt, it has no way to say anything to people who are violating the law because it's doing the same. If the corrupt administration is trying to prosecute people, how can they do it? They have no standing to do it. You turn around and spit in their face and say you're doing the damn same thing. And you're just using the power of government to shield it, the Moreland Commission being extinguished as prime example in our state. So we have to return that level of integrity. And I don't care what race you are, what gender you are, what ethnic background, what religion. That has nothing to do with it for me. What has to do with it is, are you able to advocate and figure out that issue and fight hard on that issue? And I don't see the other candidates as willing to do that. They may be able to. They're not willing to.
Lorraine, any questions?
No, this is fascinating.
So I do have a follow-up question, right? So
whatever it is.
It seems like in addition to making a break with the tendency to tolerate wrongdoing within the two-party system. What you're also proposing is a more vigorous kind of advocacy role for the New York State Attorney General to enact some of the legislation that's going to be necessary in order for us to root out the kind of systemic corruption that we're seeing now. And am I misreading?
No, you're very sharp on that, and that's exactly right. I think there are certain constitutional offices in the state that have statewide impact, or could have statewide impact. One is the governor, one is the comptroller, one is the lieutenant governor, who of course is sort of an inferior position by dint of the title, and the other is the attorney general. And the attorney general's compass is broad, protecting the health and safety of our citizens, making sure the legal system and the political system function in a responsible and non-corrupt way, making sure that civil rights legislation, which is on the books in Executive Law Section 296, is enforced, making sure now that police conduct in our state is regulated, at least with regard to homicides. As I said earlier, I think that should be broader. Those are huge responsibilities. Defending state agencies against lawsuits, and I've redefined that. Defending state agencies where the agencies have defensible positions, and otherwise bringing justice to the circumstance. I do not believe I have any obligation upon inquiry to defend someone who it's clear is violating the law. I think the contrary is true. I have an obligation to the citizens of the entire state and the victims in that case to make right. And I will do that, and I'm not afraid to do that. And I'm not afraid to make the call. People say, well, that's arrogant. How do you know what happened? I've done the study to determine what's happened. I've given everybody, as I said earlier, their due process. I'm going to listen to both sides of the story. But if the lawsuit is the battery test, and one side has an indefensible position because they never validated the test, there aren't really two sides to the story. Let's resolve it. We don't need a court to tell us what's right and wrong all the time. Lawyers often know where it is. So yes, I think it's a radical redefinition of the office and the assertion that this office has to be a force for good in the state. And I think that I could do that if given the opportunity. I recognize it's a long shot. As I say, I'm a realist. I'm not naive. But I want the people of the state to have the option of selecting someone who has 40 years of high-level experience, as I do in the legal profession, and the energy and will to do what's right. They have to decide whether my vision is right or not. I can't decide that. If they don't believe me, they don't agree, then they won't vote, or they won't vote for me. But I want them to have that chance, and I want them to vote not based on party affiliation. I was a Democrat for 46 years. I ran for county executive of my county, Orange County, as a Democrat. In 2017, I would have been the Democratic Party candidate for county executive. I rejected the nomination because I didn't want to run in the party of Mr. Cuomo, because I knew by then of the myriad corrupt practices which he was engaged in, and I didn't want that mantle. So my point is, it's not about party. It's about the individual and their ability and qualifications to do the job. And if people can begin to define politics that way, I think we'll have a far better, more exacting politics, not just based on a lever. These are Democrats, I'm therefore voting for them.
I'm coming to the close of the show, but one person made a comment, and I'm paraphrasing it to shorten it up. Basically, about you spent a lot of time talking about the AG going after Cuomo when the New York State is being attacked by Trump, and I just wanted you to get a chance to address that as Trump.
Look, I agree that many Trump administration policies are very adverse to New York. I also will agree that the Trump Foundation has probably acted in an illegal manner, and I intend to pursue those matters. But my position is that the fundamental responsibility of our Attorney General has to be to clean up New York State politics. If we have state sovereignty must mean that we can cleanse and clean our own political process without reliance on the United States Attorney's Office and Donald Trump to do it. If you're concerned, as this person who wrote is about Donald Trump, think about the fact, which is a fact, that right now Donald Trump's Justice Department is the only thing that stands between us and worse corruption. Because nobody in New York State is prosecuting anybody in New York State for the misuse of our political system. That's insane to me. The more concerned you are about Donald Trump, the more concerned you should be about that fact.
Now, I know you mentioned your website before, and a lot of people are mentioning they looked you up and they're looking you up. For those who are hearing you and they're not familiar with you, and want to know more about you, website, any social media.
Yeah, I think the
cetera.
Facebook stuff is good. I mean, Michael Sussman for Attorney General. I'm on Facebook. I also have a personal page where I happen to post a lot of things about my views, and then of course there is the website, elect Michael Sussman, New York State AG, and people can get that on the, as they search in the website. So I really appreciate it, and I just want to congratulate you for your show, for all you're doing to promote the issues you're promoting. I heard the first two guests. I know there's a lot of problems in Mount Vernon to deal with corruption, and I've heard that, and I heard today Ms. McDermott with interest, the Soup Kitchen show, and I applaud what you're doing to try to empower people. I've set up empowering centers in my region. I rent space in impoverished communities that are storefronts for people to use for whatever activities they want to use that are not hateful, so that they can, in fact, empower themselves. I don't set the program. I don't tell them what to do, but I give them the space, and I make money no issue in the use of the space. I pay for everything, but I want that space to be used constructively in those communities. And I just feel very happy that you're doing what you're doing. And I emphasize, the law is not a panacea. We need community organizations, community activists who work for change, and lawyers have to complement that. We don't lead it, we complement it. So thank you very much for having me on. I really sincerely appreciate it.
Damien wanted to say, he was adding to that, well, the person responded back, Trump is a bigger threat. Don't buy into this, people. But Damon said, let's stop, capital letters, stop talking about Trump. We have enough issues in New York. And then he said in all capital letters, all politics is local. And Ann McDermott, I guess as she made it back home, she said, thank you and your crew for having me, #respect.
Thank you for her presentation. All right, gentlemen and lady, thank you so much. It's good to be with all of you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Sussman. Pleasure to have you on the show. We wish you well in the upcoming November election.
So, round of applause. We didn't click it. Trump is impacting local. Charles Stern said, Damon, I think Trump is impacting local politics profoundly. Now, I want to say something now that he has walked out now, because I didn't want to say this when he was here. This is not an endorsement, but I firmly say with every election, we need to look at the candidates as voters. We need to look at all the candidates. We need to stop voting for people just because they're one party or another. I said this before, voting for someone because they're black or they're a woman or they're a black woman, and this is not about just James,
Right.
but this is
Not
a
everybody.
general statement.
Yes.
Even a black man because he's a black man,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying, or whatever the case may be, is not a good enough reason to vote. We have to vote for the best person, and whoever you feel. Hopefully, we get enough of them on here, and you can listen to them yourself, and you can then make informed decisions, not just vote with the tribalism of just staying. Your party is supporting this person, so you vote for that. I respect people that are Democrat that vote for a Republican candidate they think is better, or vice versa. You know what I'm saying? Like, we need to vote for the best candidate, and we need to do our homework to find out who these candidates are.
We need to
what they
vote the
stand
Green
for.
Party.
Okay, yes. I wanted to talk more about that, too. I didn't get a chance to talk about what the Green Party stood for or anything like that, so we didn't get a chance to, but I'm sure you can find this information on his website, as he stated, why he chose the Green Party and why he's running on that line. I just think, and also in the impact situation, and why is there, Lorraine, you moved your mic. As soon as you moved it, it echoed. My mic echoed for some reason. Pull your mic back to where it was. Please move that mic. Please move that mic.
Oh, this mic.
Yes. There's the echo. Because all of a sudden it was just like this echo,
you
this
got the
airy.
feedback.
Yeah. Okay. Damon, I got 5 minutes or less. Call back in and I will answer. Because he wants something he wanted to say. I lost my point there. When
So you were saying about the Green Party, though.
Oh, no, I was just saying overall, I just feel we need to vote for the best candidate in every party. We need to vote for the best candidate in every party. What were you going to say? Oh, here's Damon. Real quick, Damon, you're echoing a little bit. You need to vote for the best candidate in every party.
Whoa, that's me.
Hello, can you hear me?
One second.
Here's Damon. Go now.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Hey,
D,
what's happening, y'all?
We're coming to the close of the show, so you have very...
I just, real quick, please, listen to this, man. Let's not get caught up in this Trump nonsense, right? All that is just narrative to get us off what's going on locally. We have to discuss local issues. All politics is local. It doesn't matter what Trump do if we have a governor that's corrupt. It doesn't matter what Trump do if we have an AG. They want to talk about what Trump is doing, but black people are getting killed by police and nobody's doing nothing. The Democrats. Democrats, ain't nobody changing no laws. So why are we talking about Trump all the time? Yeah, I get it, what's going on in the White House, but we have precedent issues that's going on in our city, county, and state governments. Let's not fall into this Trump narrative. Trump is doing this, Trump is doing that, because at the end of the day, he's in office and he's going to do it.
Well, I'm going to end you right there because we're exactly at the end of the show.
Exactly.
This is a conversation that could go on forever.
D, we appreciate hearing from you, baby.
Everybody,
yes,
thank you very much. I want to say what's up to all our guests who came through. Thank you for coming through. Definitely, we're going to be following up on some issues. Also, I just want to again tell everybody, come out for the fundraiser on Thursday, October 18th. A portion of the proceeds will go to supporting the soup kitchen, and I think that's something we're trying to do to help affect change. With that said, I want to thank everybody for coming through. Thank Bob and Lorraine for being here. Damon for calling in. You are listening to Black Westchester Presents the People Before Politics radio show. This is every Sunday 6 to 8 on InTheMixRadio.com. Until next week, peace.
22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism. We see America through the eyes of someone who has been the victim of Americanism. We don't see any American dream. We've experienced only the American nightmare. We haven't benefited from America's democracy. We've only suffered from America's hypocrisy. And the generation that's coming up now can see it and are not afraid to say it. 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 And are not afraid to say it.